So my name is David Whelan. I'm the CEO of VR Education Holdings. We do two things as a company. We've built a platform called Engage, which we're demoing today, which allows educators and corporate trainers to create and share their own content and also to teach remotely on a very simple level. Think of it like virtual reality PowerPoint, but instead of using clip art, you're using 3D virtual objects, and it's also networked and recordable. And we're also very well known for our showcase experiences. We've built the Apollo 11 experience, which was a global bestseller. We've built the Titanic experience. We've worked with the BBC, worked with Oxford University, New Haven University. And on the 29th of March, we're releasing Dam Busters, which someone in the room would probably like. So I'm going to pass it over to Nikki.
Hi everyone, my name is Nikki Lannen. I'm CEO and founder of WarDucks. So we are a VR and AR games company. We build games and experiences across various VR platforms, and we're focused more on mobile augmented reality at the moment. We have had a lot of success in the VR space, so we had 6 best-selling games. Our last 2 were top 10 on PlayStation VR. And yeah, and we're looking forward to our next project, which is a kind of a longer scale project for us. So it's going to be a location-based AR game, kind of similar to Pokemon Go, but different.
Hi, I'm Martin Higginson from Immotion. We focus on really out-of-home VR experiences. So we partner with people like Merlin Entertainment is one of our lead partners, where we deliver valuable ancillary revenue for them. For us, the important factor is really mixing motion. So we have motion platforms that we mix with our own content, and we deliver a sort of what we like to think is a sort of an enhanced immersive experience. If you get chance, we tried to get a pod down these stairs, but it actually proved to be impossible. So if anybody does want to see one of our experiences and experience the motion, then contact Julian. We've got a pod over at Shard's offices in the walkie-talkie building, so please feel free.
Thank you. Hey everyone, so my name is Sam Huber. I'm the founder of Admix. We are one of the first monetization platform for VR and AR. So what we're trying to do is we are seeing a lot of great creators, lots of new games, lots of new apps being created in VR and AR, but at the moment there is very little options for them to actually monetize besides selling these apps. And selling the apps sometimes work, but if we learn anything from mobile, it's like free is generally the best business model for apps and other digital products. And that's basically what we want to do. We help apps go free by enabling them to place non-intrusive advertisement within VR and AR. We realize that the existing way that advertising works on the web and on mobile is just not adapted to VR and AR. So we're building the future of advertising in VR and AR. So we raised about $2 million recently, and we're now serving close to 200 million ads monthly in VR and AR.
Thanks, everyone. I'm particularly excited that this morning we've got representation from education, gaming, entertainment, and also advertising. So our panel really represents the AR and VR industry very, very well. I think the first question we really need to ask the team here is, how will immersive experiences disrupt the tech industry over the next 3 to 5 years? What things are we going to see? You know, what are the amazing changes that we're going to see happen to our daily lives because of AR and VR?
Okay, so in the education space, the platform that we've built, really, it's a powerful communications tool, and in the future, we see that anybody that can't afford to go to a brick-and-mortar institution or doesn't have access to a brick-and-mortar institution can get a good level of education within a virtual reality college or university. So imagine in the future, if you want to do English learning, you can do that in Oxford University in the morning. You can do your physics teaching in MIT in America in the evening. You can pick and choose your educators tailored and suited to your needs. I think VR for working communication is going to be very, very important. So we use our Engage platform for meetings and conferences. So often people say to us, look, we'll Skype you later. If we know they have a VR headset, we say, we'll engage with you later. We can go in and we can sit down, we can do a PowerPoint, we can do a whiteboard session, and we can record that as well. So it's already changing our daily work load.
So I think it's already happening. I think a lot of immersive experiences are falling into our day-to-day lives. I know for me, I'm obviously in that space, but we do hold meetings for some of the groups that I'm in VR, and I think that's going to continue. I see it trickling in more from the education and commercial space into people's everyday lives. So I think gaming will benefit off the back of that. But I think, you know, people from an education perspective will need to purchase a VR kit for their home. And I think, you know, businesses are using it for training, they're using it for meetings, and then obviously off the back of that, there's a lot of things that you can do in VR that are beneficial in our day-to-day lives. Meditation is one thing. You know, people are very focused on wellness right now, so switching off for a few minutes in a VR kit where you don't have your mobile phone near you is very beneficial. And then off the back of that, gaming is obviously the most important.
I mean, for us, it's not about the tech. You know, we think the tech is the last thing that you should be selling. And we recently altered our advertising pitch to no longer mention VR at all. All we do now is mention immersive experiences, and we've seen a significant increase on our users. So we have lots and lots of partners. You know, I mentioned Merlin earlier on. We've got some of the big shopping centres that are now partnering with us. And for the first time, VR allows us to actually deliver things like urban theme parks into these centres. And that is a massive move for some of these shopping centres. People like Merlin with the Sea Life centres or the Lego Discovery centres, what we've managed to do is drive really valuable ancillary revenue by allowing people to just escape for 5 minutes. So whether it's swimming with whales and watching humpback whales teach their calves how to swim, or whether it's swimming with sharks, it's something that we can deliver at a Sea Life centre. So I think all of these things are really, really valuable. But as I said, for us, it's not about the tech. It's just about the ability to be able to deliver those immersive experiences at an affordable price. And you know, we're starting to see that with customers now spending more and more every week in our centres.
Does this work? Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, for us, what's really exciting about VR and AR is you know, besides the application like gaming and entertainment that we see more and more of, is really this transition from a two-dimensional world where all the data is currently something that you see on a two-dimensional screen to a 3D world. So I really see this as a key transition, just like the web was the transition between the offline world and the online world. We're going to have a transition between 2D world and the 3D world. If you look around you, everything is in 3D. Yet we always project information on the screen or on a book. It's the information that we have access to is always two-dimensional. And for the first time, VR and AR actually enables you to see the world as it is. So at a very high level, that's what excites me about this transition.
Thanks very much. Just a show of hands here for the audience. Who here uses AR every day? Who here uses Snapchat every day? There's a few takers. Very good. Snapchat is a real example of using AR on an everyday basis. I think I'm seeing that more and more, certainly with, I suppose, maybe some of the kids that are in my family or people that I know. But Snapchat is a huge example of AR being used on a daily basis. So I suppose one of the questions that I have is around, you know, the AR piece, the VR piece, the various, I suppose, where do you see that being, AR being maybe more applicable than VR, or where do you see VR being more applicable than AR?
So with AR and VR, for people that don't know on a very basic level, AR, you can still see the real world around you and you can interact with 3D objects, and VR is you're totally immersed. It's going to be one and the same technology in the future. You're going to have one device that will do both. So you'll be able to do AR on this single device, and then the glasses will polarize and it'll be VR, and it will be a pair of sunglasses that you'll wear or even something smaller, and that's where the future is going. So all this technology, it's all immersive technology, and there's all different use cases. So with AR can be a very useful training aid. So say if this room was empty, you could have an aircraft engine in here and you could learn how to do maintenance on that aircraft engine. But then you might want to have a fully immersive experience where you need to be transported somewhere, An example would be in history lessons, or Apollo 11 experience, you can be Neil Armstrong and sit on the moon, so you don't need to see the real world. I think where a really, really big inflection point is coming quite soon is when Elon Musk lands people on Mars. He fully intends that everybody on this planet will be able to witness that first step in virtual reality. So that's going to be a full immersive experience. Very much like in the late 60s, not very many people had TVs, but yet everybody wanted to watch the moon landing. TV sales absolutely skyrocketed. So major events like that will really push this technology forward in the future.
Yeah, I agree with David. I think the technology is merging more and more. You know, there is still some use cases for virtual reality alone, and I think augmented reality is really being pushed forward because everyone has a mobile phone, so everyone has an AR kit in their pocket. So I think right now, because of that, you know, there's a wider audience for AR, but the future is really bright for VR and AR. And I think probably it will be a merge of the two.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the challenge today is 99% of people have never experienced VR. And I think we've got to remember that. And we can all sort of get excited about what we can do in the lab, but the reality is it's about the here and now and how do you generate cash today. So I think we spend our time really on sort of functionality over form, and it really is about, you know, how can you deliver something that drives revenue today? And sometimes you're going to have to, you know, put a pair of glasses on that are not as high quality as maybe something else. And the reason you have to do that is because you've got to collaborate. You've got to sort of re-register a lot of these things every time. So the calibration of these it can be quite hard in a sort of industrial area. So I think what we've got to remember is there's lots of stuff that is going to happen definitely in the future, but I think we've got to bring it back to the here and now. You remember that 99% of people have never experienced things. So I think let's get them experiencing. You know, one of the things we're seeing is, you know, we're getting people onto the cinematic pods, and then they're actually progressing up to then doing car racing and then interactive gaming and actually spending 30, 40 minutes in VR. But they'd never do that, you know, out of the gate. And I think this is really, really important. Let's just allow people to sort of walk before we sort of start racing ahead, because I think it's easy. We all get very excited about this, but you as investors have to remember that this is sort of day one of an exciting journey.
Yeah, not much to add to that, to be honest. I think, you know, I like to see VR as more like the desktop computer in a way, because it's fully inclusive. It takes you somewhere else, so you can't really walk when you're wearing it. Whereas AR, when we're talking about mobile AR with glasses, it's something that will be more like the mobile, something you can always have on. Doesn't mean you will always see augmented reality content. You know, it's something that will have notification when you need them, very contextual to help you out. Whereas VR is more going to be probably home entertainment and something you'll do at home in the comfort of your own home.
Great. I have a question for David here beside me, just particularly around the immersiveness of the VR education piece. I know you mentioned to me the retention levels in a VR environment are significant versus the real world. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I can give you some real-world examples. So in some cases, using VR over traditional methods, there's an 80% better retention rate. Now, VR is not a new technology. Jesus, I must have been up early. So it's been around over 40 years, but only high-end institutions have been able to use VR. So the likes of NASA, medical training institutions, the US military have been using VR for training for many, many years. And what we're using with it now is with Oxford University. What they used to do previously was they used to put professors on aeroplanes, send them over to Africa to teach students over there how to resuscitate babies with very, very limited equipment. And they used to use a doll to do that. Now they've installed VR equipment with the help of HTC over in Africa, and the professors stay in Oxford University and they teach the students remotely using a virtual reality baby simulator, and they have to save that baby, and they have 4 minutes to save that baby. Now previously, when you had a room full of medical students and they're working on a doll, it's very hard to take that seriously. But because you're in an immersive experience where you're totally enclosed, the amount of stress that we can induce on the students is unbelievable, and they retain that knowledge, and the baby baby, the virtual baby, is getting bluer and bluer until you save that baby. And then the relief that we see these students have when they take off the headset, because they're absolutely sweating buckets. And a lot of the investors, our early investors, when they come to our office, the first thing we throw them into is save the baby. And they absolutely freak out. Barry's killed multiple babies. You know, he's an absolute demon in it. But it just goes to show, like, these immersive experiences, until you've tried it, it's very hard to describe. It's very much like being there. So it's a very powerful medium, and it is truly the only medium where you can do this. In AR as well, as AR gets better and better. The way I can see you guys here, has anybody ever seen The Kingsman, the movie, when everybody is sitting down having a conference? That's AR, and we can do that today in virtual reality. And when AR headsets become available, like the HoloLens 2, with the Engage platform, we'll be able to do that for real.
I think we pass the microphone on, and maybe people can talk about sort of, I suppose, real cases where people have a sort of out of reality experience in the virtual world. And you're definitely going to get that in gaming, and you're definitely going to get that in entertainment. And then Sam, you can talk about how we commercialize all that at the end.
I suppose I can talk about a personal experience I had. We had our office in central Dublin, and another VR studio asked us to come over and to demo a project they had been working on, and it was for the army. And so I went over to demo it, and part of the experience was you were sitting on a chair and you put on the headset and you are in a helicopter and you're racing away from some conflict. And so we went up in the helicopter, I was sitting on the chair, and suddenly they said, could you step up now? So I had to stand up, and they asked me to step out of the aircraft. And I was in a room, obviously, and I work in VR, but I actually couldn't step out, which is bizarre. And they said like 95% of people can't step out. And so the army is using this as training for, you know, their teams, because that's obviously a scary situation. But the fact that you can create something that is so immersive that people actually believe they are there is great for training purposes.
Yeah, I think, you know, if you do get chance, please go and experience, you know, some virtual reality. If you really get chance and have time, go across the Shard's office and mix that with some motion, because I think once you get motion on there, along with the VR, it does actually take you to a place that you know it is complete escapism. I think we were giving an investor presentation at Shard, and we had some family came in. And to hear the screams of the kids whilst we were doing the investor presentation really just brought it home to how real this was. It was really happy screams, but at the time I think we were giving a presentation to Guy Feld, who is not known for his happiness at the best of times, and so it was quite amusing for Guy to experience those screams, I think.
Sam, maybe you can talk about the advertising aspect, how you commercialize the content, and we can maybe pass back across the panel and they can talk about their experience as well.
Yeah, sure. So really the approach that we're taking is that the last thing we would want to do is to break the immersion, right? All this stuff that you mentioned, this is only possible because you really feel like you're part of this experience. And so the last thing we would want to do is to have advertisement that remind you that this is not real, such as a pop-up or something that you need to see before getting in the experience. So instead, we're taking a kind of a real-life approach where if you look around you, there's brands everywhere, every item is branded. And that's really what we want to do. We want to make it more real by integrating brands as part of the experience. So that when you're in a city, you walk and you see a billboard, instead of being a fake ad, it's actually a real ad served by a real company who wants to reach you at this very moment. So this is basically what we're doing. So we have different products. You can integrate simple banners, videos, and very soon 3D products, like a bottle of water, a can of Coke, a laptop, you know, in the experience that really look like they are part of the experience, but actually they are ads. And you know, to some extent, our goal is to bring advertising back into the creative process. I was a developer myself before, running a small game studio, and was very frustrated by the options that we had to monetize our games. You know, you basically could only have a video before the content or a banner at the bottom, and you couldn't customize it in any way. So instead, what we're doing is telling the developers, Now you can actually you can decide where you want the ads to be, when they trigger, what they look like. And so the developers actually control the advertising experience as well, as if it was part of the creative experience. And from the experience that we have with over 100 developers using our platform, they absolutely love that.
So the commercialization, is it, of the products? So I can give you some real-world examples again. So we work closely with Shenandoah University in the United States. They've licensed our Engage platform, and they use it for creating their own simulations. They work a lot with first responders, they work a lot with military contracts as well. And an example of some military work that they do is treating post-traumatic stress disorder. So there's a lot of soldiers coming back from battlefields in the UK and the United States, and they have, for better words, shell shock. So they're very jittery. It's a very, very post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a really, really bad disorder. And the way they're treated within virtual reality is they're made relive what gave them that disorder. So if it was an IED, they're made relive that IED explosion, and it desensitizes. Now, it sounds like an absolute nightmare, but it really, really works with the soldiers. And with Shenandoah, they're doing a lot of, as I said, first responder training inside as well. So a lot of active shooter stuff happens in the US. You know, it's like, how do we respond? What are the procedures? So that's the kind of stuff they're teaching within the Engage platform today.
That's great. You happy to talk about commercialization and how you're going with your gaming, and how you're getting traction within the market?
Yeah, sure. So our product is a B2C product. So, we launch it on the various platforms. If we build like a high-end VR game, we launch it on the high-end platforms, and then a mobile one on the mobile platforms, and then we sell them just basically to consumers. So on PlayStation VR through the PlayStation Store. We haven't put advertising in any of our games as of yet, but we will down the line. It is a fine balance, again, because, when people are in an experience, there's definitely such a good opportunity to advertise to them and to get messages through to them, but you do not want to get them out of the experience that they're having. And then, you want to make sure it's kind of more passive than aggressive, because you don't want to cheapen your own brand. I feel like VR experiences are kind of like a movie, so you have to be very careful, that you're not very, very obvious with that. So that is something we will look to do down the line.
Nikki, what kind of customer demand growth are you seeing at the moment? Like you've had a number of great successes with your games. What kind of growth are you seeing there? What kind of customer demand change are you seeing over maybe the last, 18, 24 months? Yeah,
sure. So, we see a lot of success over the Christmas period, and I think David will agree with me on that. PlayStation VR is definitely our biggest platform, and that's the audience. It's a gamer audience. They're willing to spend money on titles. We see the Christmas period being the most popular period, and then there is quite significant sales there, and a lot of interest for that type of content. But PlayStation VR is definitely the platform that we focus on.
Great.
Yeah.
I mean, we're totally focused on commercialization. I think when we started this business, it was really about what can the end customer actually afford to pay. And that's where we started the journey, rather than designing something first. We felt that sort of £3 to £5 per experience was the right price. I think a lot of VR experiences are just too expensive. Things like The Void is great. It's an amazing experience, but at sort of £20, £30 per head, I think it's just out of the reach of most families. So what we did is we looked at what was the end price, and then we reversed engineered everything. So when you go to our centres, we pride ourselves on being technology agnostic. It's about just eroding those costs down and beating people up. We're all about the content. Most of our stuff at the moment runs on out of home. That doesn't mean that, as with anything, it won't find itself in home as the market starts to grow. But we're really focused on the out of home experience. And we're seeing revenues grow, rapidly, compared compared a year ago, in one of our centres, we've seen amazing increases in terms of customer usage and spend. So I think VR is definitely going up, and also the profile of people coming through the door. As I said earlier on, it was about 99% of people had never experienced it, so it's getting them onto something, maybe it's a roller coaster ride, and then within 2 months they're then coming back and they're going on car racing, and as I said, they're spending inordinate amounts of time actually immersed in that whole VR area. And now we're introducing more and more multiplayer type games. And we're starting to see much, much greater take-up. But again, everything that we do is based on sort of roughly about £1 a minute. And I think if we do that, and then if you book for 60 minutes, you're getting it for sort of 40 quid. But it's actually offering value for money. And as we touched on before, shopping centres, entertainment centres are going through a state of crisis. What we can actually offer is a solution to that. And whilst we're only part of the solution, offering entertainment in these centres is a reason to actually go to a shopping mall over and beyond just shopping. Online shopping actually creates more leisure time. So what we're about is actually giving you something to do within that leisure time, giving something that the family can do. And I think that's where we're really making a big difference at the moment.
So I guess we're in a fortunate position in a way that we're not exactly part of the VR AR market, because our revenue actually doesn't come from VR AR users, but they come from big brands like Uber, National Geographic, Adidas, Orange, who wants to advertise in a new channel. And we're giving them the opportunity for the first time to get their brand seen in a different way in VR and in AR. And so, it kind of creates, obviously, new opportunities. And I think in terms of commercialization and growth, we've been literally blown away by how many people were actually using VR, not only on the premium channel like Oculus or Vive, but also simply downloading simple apps on their phones and actually on the Play Store or iOS Store. We actually launched our programmatic solution towards the summer last year. At the time, we were serving around 2 million ad requests per month, and this has steadily increased to 200 million today. So not only do we have more apps on the platform, but the apps that are already on our platform are actually growing and growing pretty quickly as well. So this is a very, very good sign for the industry.
So I think we're close on 5 minutes to go. I think this is probably a good time to see if the audience have any questions for the panel. I see a question down here.
Here we go. It's Mr. VR.
Thank you. Firstly, Samuel, a kind request, please. I think what you're doing is fantastic, actually, but please don't put it into Beat Saber, because I would just find that too distracting. But what I'm interested to hear, actually, from each of you, because you do come from different elements of the ecosystem, which is great and fantastic for today. 2016, we were told, was the year for VR and AR. 2017 was the same, and 18 was the same. Maybe 19, 20 years, but I'd be interested to know from each of you, what is that thing that really needs to happen to get it to that next level?
You can't believe in Facebook all the time. So it's practical applications. Is this going to make a difference in my life? How is this going to help my life? Do I need to travel so much? Is this going to make me smarter? Can I do things more productive in virtual reality? At the moment, it is very much an entertainment product. So it's being used very much in games. Pornography is a big thing in VR as well. Probably half the money in VR is gone in there. But the next generation of hardware, which is coming this year, first half of this year, the Oculus Quest is a $400 device. You don't need any laptops. You don't need any cables. It's a very, very good experience. A lot of people looked at the Oculus Go as the dawn of VR, but really that's a $200 device. It's 3 degrees of freedom. So if you move forward and backwards within that device, it can make people feel dizzy, and it put a lot of people off. This next generation, which we're only weeks away from, really will be the birth of VR, I feel. It's going to take businesses really to take a hold of it, so training applications, conferences and the likes. Then it will filter into education, but definitely this next generation is the one that we've been waiting for. And Apple are developing a device as well. They haven't said when it's coming out. I believe it's going to come out in 2020. When Apple bring out a device, it'll be really cool. It'll cost twice as much as anybody else, but people will lap it up immensely.
So I agree with David. So I think definitely it's going to filter in a different way. I think they were quite aggressive in their figures before. They just expected people to run out and buy a VR kit because they were on the market. And even the hardware wasn't there. So a lot of the hardware had lots of wires. It wasn't something you could set up in your sitting room. You needed a lot of room. And it wasn't feasible. And looking back now, you know, it wasn't going to happen. But now the hardware is starting to evolve. I think that doesn't mean that everyone's going to run out to the store and buy one. I think it's going to filter in through education. People will need one as part of their school course. They'll need one as part of their, you know, university course. They'll, you know, need one for work, so they'll have one at the office. It'll become more normalised, but it is a longer play. And I think as we see the hardware evolve more and more, you know, it will filter in a lot more into people's everyday lives, but that'll just take some time.
I just think we've got to be a little bit careful about talking too much about hardware. The challenge really is people don't buy tech. People buy what you can do on tech. And I think what we've got to focus on is getting more companies to produce good stuff that you can do on tech, because that's what will drive take-up. You know, we need more content companies. We pride ourselves on ultimately being a content company. And we need more people to experience good quality VR. Because most people that have experienced VR have probably done it on their mobile phone, they've done it on a pair of Google Cardboard, they've maybe done a roller coaster that hasn't been very good, it'll make them feel sick, and therefore it's a bit like 3D, it's okay, but not for me. If you actually get somebody to experience a true immersive experience, then they do want to come back, and they'll keep coming back for more and more and more. But it is about that education. And you know, we've actually seen for the first time a seismic shift in the number of users and the number of people spending in our stores. And that has been driven by us just changing the marketing message. And now, as I said in the first question, we no longer talk about VR. We no longer talk about tech. We purely talk about immersive experiences. And we just talk about, would you like to go swimming with whales? Would you like to go on the world's most extreme roller coaster? And that's actually made a massive difference to our user numbers. And I think that's, for me, is what it's all about, is better content, better education, just get people to sample this. And, you know, we're now creating more and more pop-up stores that we're touring around just to actually show people what good immersive experiences are. And every time we do that, then we see more and more people coming back.
Yeah, I think Martin's totally right. You know, at a high level, what VR needs is that its perceived value is higher than its cost, and that's the same with literally every product to make it popular. I think right now the cost is getting down, which is amazing. We've went from close to $1,000 to $200 in a few years, which is a tremendous drop in price. But the value is still probably unclear for most people. They're not quite sure what VR can do for them. They know it's great, everyone loves it, but it's not something that they want to get back to regularly. There is no pull for them to come back to it regularly. I talk about the missing FOMO, the fear of missing out, that is not there in VR today, because everyone likes it, everyone does it when they have spare time, but it's not something that drives you back like your phone does, 100 times a day. So I think once this value gets a bit clearer, whether it's with new content, for example, proper application that really bring you value, really help your life in a meaningful way, whether it's by saving time or making something more exciting or delivering value really in any way. I think that's what we are getting towards.
Can I just add to that as well? Where we are today is very much like the late 80s, early 90s with this technology. So I remember back, I was in school at that stage, and my computer at a lot of schools, nobody was touching them. They were collecting dust. People didn't know what to do with them. So where people seen computers first, they seen them in schools, they seen them in work because you could store a lot of data on them. This technology is the very same way. It's going to take corporates and education to really take on board this before it filters into the general population.
Other questions?
I see. Yep.
Maybe just a general question, if I could. If we look at the S-curves that Barry talked about this morning, much of what happened in the late stage of internet and mobile was dominance by social platforms. Do we think VR is ripe for that event to happen as well? Do we think social platforms could dominate there? Thanks.
So Facebook are building their own social platform called Facebook Spaces, and Mark Zuckerberg went on stage and said he wants to put 1 billion people in VR over the next 5 years. That's a really big target. VR is a very social, can be a very social application. A lot of people say, oh, I'm inside by myself, but you can actually get people in remotely. So in our platform, Engage, you can have 40 people log in remotely and interact. So it is a very, very social experience. The application that's being used most throughout the world at the moment is called VR Chat. I think it's got about 150,000 registered users. 50,000 of those use VR all the time, and everybody else uses a standard desktop display. So it can be a very social tool, as AR can be as well.
I totally agree. I think, I don't know who the main player is going to be, but we're definitely going to see loads of social channels in VR. We've already seen massive adoption there. People want to communicate. People don't want to be on their own. So it's I think that's going to be a huge opportunity going forward.
I think all of this tech is, if you look back, whether it be the internet or whether it be mobile phones, what it actually needs is killer applications, and that's what will drive the difference. So at some point, somebody will come up with a killer application that will drive users to want this. And if you think back to the mobile phones, and it's not that long ago, the early 2000s, we were just using mobile phones to talk on. And now we very rarely talk, we just send texts and all the rest of it. And it is things that Facebook, how many people sort of interact with Facebook or Snapchat or WhatsApp or whatever on their mobile phones? And all of those didn't exist before. And I think that's what's driven sort of greater phone take-up and a greater need for smartphones and all the rest of it. It's not necessarily the smartphone itself. It is what's inside that smartphone. So I think somebody at some stage will crack an amazing social application, and that will then drive more and more take-up without a doubt.
I think one limitation of that at the moment is the fact that applications are kind of self-contained, right? If you are in a social application, it's very hard to go to another one in VR. And that's something that a lot of companies are working with, which is not only creating social experience in the experience, but also how can a user go from one experience to another. So kind of like creating hyperlinks in VR, a web for VR in a way. Back in the day, the internet existed way before the web, where you had all these kind of siloed servers and computers, which was very hard to navigate between one and another. And at the moment, VR, because it's such a young market, is also in this stage. And I think over the next few years, we're going to see a lot of applications that enable users to go from one app to another, discovering more apps, and that's really, really going to increase the adoption of those apps.
Okay, I think that's it for the panel. So thank you, Dave. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Sam. I think some of the takeaways are that, in the very near future, when we're all together, we're going to find the world very flat without AR and VR. It's going to be a flat experience. And the other sort of takeaway for you guys is, why aren't you using Snapchat? Thank you.